here for Carp 3 TV for another edition of All Inbox. I'm here with Bryan Devonshire, and he's going to answer your questions. How's it going, Bryan?
Good morning. It's going well.
Good to see you.
You too.
Now, our first question is from Sean. He's from Vegas, and he writes, when you're average stacked and look down at a hand like ace-jack or ace-10 under the gun deep in a tournament, what are your considerations on what to do with it pre-flop?
It's a great question. First, I want to talk about when you're not deep in a tournament with ace-jack or ace-10 and there's no antes in play and you're under the gun or early position, I just muck that trash. Just send it back to the muck. Way easier to play. There's too much, the old term, the reverse implied odds with that hand. However, when you're deeper in a tournament, there's a lot of factors that are dependent upon whether or not I'm going to open that hand or not. One depends on the depth of the average stacks. If we're deeper, I'm definitely more inclined to be opening there when there's antes in play. It also depends on how much respect my early position raises are getting. There's some spots where you can open under the gun with like almost anything, and people are like, "Oh wow, you just opened under the gun," and muck. But ace-jack and ace-10 are good for card removal because it takes hands out of their ranges that they could possibly have to play back at you. But it's not a hand you want to be playing out of position very often. So I'll open it a lot when I'm deep at the right tables, probably 60% to 70% of the times that I see that hand deep in a tournament. Other times I'm just fine mucking it. I never, ever open limp with it. I think that's way too exploitable.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. So it definitely depends on your table. So if you're playing really loose and you don't think your raise under the gun will get any respect, you kind of just want to muck it?
Well, if I'm playing really loose, it means that my range is pretty wide and that ace-jack or ace-10 is probably towards the top end of my range. So then I'm like, woohoo, we got some real cards, rather than like the 8-5 offsuit, which I'll open under the gun sometimes too. But it's all dependent upon just really the texture of the table and the way things are happening and going on. And, if people are flatting a lot behind you, so like your post-flop hand strength is relevant, then I like playing an ace-jack or an ace-10. Again, you just got to be really, really, really careful, pot control later.
Absolutely. No, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Next question, Brian from Michigan. I was on vacation in Vegas and playing 1-2 no limit hold'em at the Venetian, and I was wondering if you could give me some advice on a hand I played. A loose maniac with $200 raised to 15 as he'd done the last 5 out of 6 hands. A new player with a $275 stack called, and I re-raised to 50 with queens on the button. I had both players covered. What do you think about this re-raise size?
Part of me likes it, part of me doesn't like it. You're basically guaranteeing that you're going to get called, making it $50. I like that because you're in position. If you're out of position, I would have made it at least 70.
Because cash games in Vegas seem to play so much bigger than the actual stakes.
Right. I mean, the guy's already 7.5 Xing it pre-flop, and then you got the flat caller in between. Anytime there's a raise in a cash game, when I'm in position, if I'm re-raising it, I'm generally making it right around 3x. If I'm out of position, I'm making it like 3.5 to 4x, and then I add for every flatter in between. So in this spot, if I was sitting there, I would probably make it around $60-65. It makes it a little bit easier to play post-flop, as when we continue in the hand, we'll see, just based on the stack sizes, because then you make the effective stack like $215 with the other player and $140 with the other player, and you've got like almost 200 in the pot. So basically you leave everyone in the pot size bet left. It's really easy to play the hand post flop.
Absolutely. Okay, so the flop, both players called, and the flop was queen 10 5 2 diamonds. Both players checked to me. I bet 50 because they didn't want to check, even though I had top set because the board was draw heavy, but I wanted to seem weak. What do you think of this bet?
I think your bet sucks. There's $153 in the pot minus the rake, and you just bet 50. You're giving them 4-1 on your money. If they have a flush draw, like, you're forcing them to make the right call with a flush draw. They're probably going to go all in with their flush draws or whatever. Anyways, like, that's fine. You have top set, but you don't want to like just let them flat and see it for cheap because you're offering them that price. If you made your pre-flop raise size bigger, you could just jam in this spot, and your range is balanced between like your air and your sets and your overpairs and all that sort of stuff, because you end up with one pot size bet left. And when you just ship it, people are like, "Oh, you just shipped it." That could mean a lot of things. But when you bet $50, like, Just, yeah, I mean, with your pre-flop raise size and based on the stack sizes, I would probably bet about a third of the effective stack at this point. You know, where one guy's got 140, so he's kind of irrelevant, but the other guy's got like 225, right? So I would bet like $75 is way better than 50. Or, I mean, shoving it isn't that much of an overbet, and if they have any sort of anything, they're going to be like, oh, well, I can't really fold now. There's so much money in the pot, and live players generally don't think about the exact math of the stack sizes, so it could work out there. But I would either bet all of my chips or about $75 in that spot.
Or, okay. And anywhere in between, though, would seem kind of weird, though, because then you leave
Right, and it's kind of awkward. The reason you want to bet smaller is you want to induce some sort of spewy shove. You want to give off the perception of them actually having fold equity on the flop. That's why you would bet smaller. But when you bet 50, it's so small that they can be like, oh, wow, this is so cheap, I can just call. I don't even need to think about trying to get the guy off the hand.
Right. Perfect. All right, well, the turn was the ace of diamonds. The player checked, and he shoved all in, which player, said, like we said, he had about 200 left. So at that point, after betting 50, do you think that's an okay play when the ace of diamonds is the turn?
The money needs to get in the middle. There's enough money in the pot, and there's not enough money in the stacks. It's a crappy card, obviously, but stick the money in, especially when they checked you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
You got it, Christy.
Christy Arnett with Bryan Devonshire for All Inbox here at Card Player TV. And don't forget, if you have your own questions, send it in to allinbox@cardplayer.com.